From coast to coast, well, almost from coast to the Mountain West or the Intermountain West, we've got Jake Smith from the Atlantic Coast and Bill Colley from the Intermountain West. And this edition of Boardwalk Potatoes is underway.
And Bill, we have had a very busy week. I have a legal analyst who comes on my show. His name is John O'Connor. He wrote a book about the Washington compost last year and the corruption of the Washington. It's called Postgate. And how Woodward Bernstein and the rest of them created the Marxist state media that we have today. And I had him on the show talking about Bob Woodward and what took place with, the lies that President Trump was trying to downplay and prevent us from learning the truth about the coronavirus. And I said to him, John, what's it going to be next week? He says, I don't know, but I'm sure you'll call me. So,
It's interesting is I was reading the other day that the president came out in April at a news conference at the White House and told the assembled media exactly the same thing that he told Bob Woodward. Exactly, and when you have people getting in fistfights over bales of toilet paper, maybe he was right to try to calm the public because things could have gotten really, really out of hand. You think the unrest we're seeing right now is bad? If we had been in a moment where people thought that the Andromeda strain was loose, we could have had cities burning down entirely.
No question about it. You brought up the exact issue that I brought up on my radio show this week, and that is if the president was downplaying the seriousness of the virus and we still had no toilet paper in our stores coast to coast, can you imagine what the stock market, what our store shelves would have looked like? We would have been in a mass panic something to the effect that we had never, ever seen before in this country.
I've got to think that that mainstream media, though, is trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat every week in order to get rid of the guy they just cannot stand.
No question.
And it has gotten to the point where you're going to put a fellow who's clearly got dementia into the White House just to get rid of somebody you don't like. That just tells you how completely unhinged these people are. Just before we started, in fact, I was telling you, Jeffrey Goldberg at The Atlantic, who wrote the piece that said Trump had been disparaging the troops and the poor dead, Jeffrey Goldberg has been backing away from his story.
Yes, he has.
But you don't see that on the front page of Pravda on the Potomac or the New York Times. What they hope is that people, it's a little bit like they said President Trump called some countries crap hole countries, which they obviously, there are some of them.
Yes, a lot of people agreed with the president's assertion of what those countries really are.
If indeed he made the assertion. The thing is, liberals keep repeating it as if it's truth, even though it's just hearsay. And it's the same idea that he called all Mexicans rapists and murderers when he clearly said some of them are, many of them are people. But there's this belief that if they just keep repeating the half-truth or the smear, that is going to be right. It's just straight out of Joseph Goebbels.
Well, you know that The Atlantic now, as much as Mr. Goldberg backtracked the last couple of days about his claims that President Trump disparaged World War I soldiers who did not make it home, which is obviously not the truth. But now that the president has another nomination for, you're laughing, Bill, for the Nobel Peace Prize, now The Atlantic says perhaps the Nobel Prize has outlived its usefulness. Well, they weren't saying that when Obama got one for doing diddly squat, for nothing. President Trump has brought two Arab states together with Israel, with peace accords. That is something that has never been done before. And now, all of a sudden, if President Trump's going to get a Nobel Prize, well, we really probably shouldn't have a Nobel Prize anymore. That's really what The Atlantic is saying, correct?
Yeah, the last couple of days, I had some time off this week, and I watched some videos from something called, I believe, the Foreign Policy Agency or Institute. And they were talking about all of these intractable problems we have in the Middle East. And some of these were shot in 2016, 2015. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, well, President Trump solved ISIS. He's also really allowed that part of the world to know that they're no longer kings when it comes to oil production, because we can pretty much outpace anything that they do.
OPEC does not have the power that it once had.
He's essentially let them know
of its power.
He's essentially let them know that if they really want to, get with the program, they've got to settle some old disputes. And he's the first foreign policy realist we've likely had I don't know, since the 1940s and 50s with a guy named Robert Taft from Ohio,
Right.
who got, after World War II, got shunted aside as the internationalists took over both parties. But I was watching these talking heads in this documentary, this series of documentaries, and people along the lines of Paul Bremer, the so-called
Oh, yeah.
State Department insider elites who, that sit around, as they used to be called, the striped pants crowd, and pontificate about how the world works. And it shows you they really know nothing about how the world works, but a developer from Queens can step in and say, well, wait a second, and he can solve the
We've been
problem.
doing it this way for years. Now let's do it this way and see what happens. What have you got to lose? How many times have you heard him say that, Bill?
Yeah, what have you got to lose?
What have you got to lose?
I just, again, you see the efforts by the other side to cozy up to China once more.
Iran.
Biden the other day saying letting China into the World Trade Organization was not a mistake, and then rambling on about how we want China to grow. And I'm thinking, they're growing on us. And he said, well, we want them to grow to be peaceful. Well, they grew and they used the growth to build a huge military to take us out. Again, this is the type of guy that mainstream media is backing to run the show. I'm sorry, but we've got an existential crisis if Biden becomes president.
Or you have the fact that Beijing will be running the U.S. government. I mean, those are the choices. I mean, if President Trump wins, we will continue to put the screws to Beijing. If Biden wins, Communist China and the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing will be calling the shots. I mean, there are just too many ties between the Biden family and Beijing to ignore. But if the Socialist Democrats are going to continue to ignore that, well, then I guess we're done for. I mean, really, I said that yesterday when I closed my show out. If Joe Biden wins the election, this nation as we know it is done for.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Are Chinese behind these groups? Well, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist group. Group has
Right.
probably something in common with the Chinese Communist Party. But are the Chinese behind the fomenting of revolution that we're seeing? And you were telling me before we hit the show today or got on air, somewhat of a quaint term, I guess.
Yeah.
You were saying that we are looking at these organizations. If Trump wins re-election, we think that we've seen quite a lot of nasty violence already this summer, but
Yep.
this is going to be exponential growth that we'll see following Election Day.
Bill, that is a great question, and what we're talking about is an article that you and I were discussing before the podcast began this morning on the threats being made by these insurgent groups, by these domestic terror groups. I mean, that's what they are, but they're clearly being funded, trained, and getting their planning, and they're getting all of the things that they need to pull off what they've been doing. They're getting from somewhere. Now, George Soros obviously cannot do this all himself, but these groups have gotten together. They formed a coalition. It's a coalition of more than 50 leftist groups. They're organizing a major response if there is a Trump victory in November, or if the Socialist Democrats are, let's put it this way, there's any hint that they've stolen the election, and President Trump says, whoa, wait a minute, we've got a contested election here. They're also going to take control and pillage, burn, and destroy more of our cities and communities. Bill, I think that's a great question, because clearly China has a lot to lose with Donald Trump. They had a lot to win and a lot to gain, but now, for the first time, an American president since Richard Nixon went to Peking in 1972, clearly the first American president is seeing China for what they are, a major threat to world peace and a safe financial structure throughout the world. What are your thoughts?
The last person to see these people for what they really were was 70 years ago with Douglas MacArthur. What worries me about these domestic terrorists, a couple of years ago, some of the guys who host our gun show at my radio station, they shared a video with me which showed you a lot of these leftists out at a gun range,
Right.
and they looked like the old story about the gang that couldn't shoot straight, which was a book by a very famous columnist I once met. You may have met Jimmy Breslin as well.
Yes.
But they look like they couldn't. The old joke from your friend Ted Nugent. one side has 18 trillion rounds of ammunition. The other side doesn't know which bathroom to use. And that seemed kind of, after seeing this video, I thought, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. But a lot has changed in those couple of years. These people have gotten trained up. I used to think that if they had faced some backlash, that they would go with their tails between their legs.
They've doubled down, Bill.
They're serious. They are willing to do. There's been a guy who's been spotted at a few of these different rallies, riding around, and he's actually got his gasoline bombs in the car, ready to throw them out windows. And I've seen this verified now, that this is the same individual who's been seen in several of these different riotous locations. They're not afraid. I used to believe that they would just turn and run and go back to mommy's basement, but they're ready they're out for bear. These are very dangerous people now.
Well, have these Confucius educational centers in America's finest colleges and universities, have they been preparing these young people for exactly what's happening now? In other words, were these dormant terror cells that Beijing is now activating, young people that they have brainwashed, if you want to call it brainwashing, I think that's probably the best explanation for it, Bill, brainwashed at these Confucius centers? Is this what we're seeing now? And if so, where is the Department of Homeland Security? We created this massive bureaucracy of the Department of Homeland Security to focus on what, Bill? Protecting the homeland. And why are they not infiltrating, arresting, and if so, sending these people off to Gitmo? Because that's really where they should be going. I just posted that on Facebook not 30 minutes ago.
I've done a lot of reading of Victor Davis Hanson's books over the last several years.
Yeah, he's a great guest. I love having him on my show.
Yeah, I had a fascinating conversation with him off air one day, several months back. The man was on a TV program last week and said from the moment nobody actually acted, this could have been stopped in the early stages if someone had gone in and said, all right, you're off to jail. That didn't happen. So that's only emboldened these people.
Yes,
as far
agreed.
As someone, the old days of the FBI infiltrating some of these groups, long gone, I guess. Ever since the Church Committee really destroyed the apparatus in the 70s that we had in place.
That was the Senator Frank Church, his committee, that did that.
From Idaho.
Yep.
Unfortunately. Ever since the destruction of America's intelligence community, we're still trying to recover. Homeland Security spent years telling us that a bunch of guys out in Saginaw, Michigan, or in the rural areas outside of Saginaw, Michigan with hunting rifles were what we had to fear. And I've seen no violence. They scream and they yell about military-style assault rifles. You're talking about a rifle that, because it doesn't have a wooden stock, it might not even be as powerful, but because it has a metal stock, they tell us those are the dangerous people that we have to look out for. And yet, I can turn on my television set any night, and it's like, well, day 107 of Portland, and you see the flames, and you see
That's right.
And this is not a wildfire. This is being caused by people who are just being allowed to misbehave night after night after night. And they're getting, clearly we used to also joke, don't these people have jobs? Well, yes, they do. They're getting paid to do this.
Correct. This is their job. They are domestic terrorists, and they're being paid to terrorize the American public and also threaten them that if they reelect Donald Trump, they are really going to cause problems. So you better not vote for Trump if you go to the polls in November. Bill, I got a call from a listener 2 days ago. The listener said that he had been informed by someone who got word through Delaware State Police that new houses under construction on a road called Beaver Dam Road, you know it very well. It's very close to the radio station where I did my show, where you were program director of that radio station. There were, for all intents and purposes, bricks, weapons, the things that Antifa and Black Lives Matter has been using to rage the civil war against America's cities. Those supplies were found in one of or a couple of the houses under construction. He said the state police were there. They were investigating. Those supplies were there. They were obviously planted there to be used at some other time. It's already been reported that these groups have already been planning to come into this community, on the Delmarva Peninsula here in Sussex County specifically. But there's one thing that I can verify what that caller saw. Earlier this past week, when I was coming home from my radio show from the radio station, I passed by that housing development that's under construction, and I saw the state police vehicles there, and I saw them speaking with the builders who were there. So there was clearly something to that story. Now, as I told that listener who called, I can't verify what you're telling me is true, but I can verify that I passed by there. I saw the state police, and I saw the discussions going on between the state police and those responsible for building those houses. Clearly something happened there. But we have to stay on top of this. Now, as you know, this is a well-armed community, Bill. People here are not going to tolerate what they're tolerating in Portland. It's not going to happen. They start with this uprising. They're going to have a belly full of lead as you know, in very short order.
I was told by some folks in local law enforcement here, and Southern Idaho is not quite perhaps is vocal about defending itself perhaps as North Idaho. North Idaho is part of an area that they call the Redoubt, which encompasses parts of Idaho, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, maybe even Eastern Washington State. But I was told by local law enforcement that they have some intelligence that these people have targeted this area, that if this happens, they will move in. But even here, I don't think they're going to have a long shelf life. There's a joke, a sergeant with Idaho State Police told me one time, he said, I just assume it's Idaho, everybody's carrying. And we don't have you don't need a permit for concealed carry here. If you want to buy a pistol and strap it on your side, you can.
Right.
It's recommended you train, but you can.
Same here in Delaware. If you want to do that here in Delaware, you can do the same. You can strap it, as long as it's not concealed. You need a permit for that.
We don't even need the permit for concealment. So you've got a population here, and I just talked to a friend on Friday who runs training courses, and they're packed. He's had to add courses, and people coming out aren't just they're housewives. They're two women who were in their 90s, sisters, came out to one of his classes the other day. He's had church pastors who come out, and they shoot with him now on a regular basis. So people here are they're weary, but they're prepared. It's just that I don't know where the government's going to be in all of this, because if that's, I do have some fears that I don't know. The deep state and Donald Trump, let's face it,
well,
they're not friendly.
That leads me to my next question. Mueller's investigative team, including Mueller, Andrew Weissman, Lisa Page, they wiped their phones clean, and now they claim it was an accident. Rosemary Wood is dead and buried. Bill, they must think we're stupid morons, but it leads us to believe that the only way that we're ever going to straighten this nation out is if well-armed militias go into Washington and straighten it out ourselves. Is it getting to the point where the deep state is so rooted in Washington, is so much in control, they have so much power that it's impossible to eliminate it and destroy it without citizens taking up arms and going into Washington and fixing it? What do you think?
I think we're going to just have to say it's 1790 all over again. Put that system in place. You'll eliminate a lot of these departments, education and energy, and
right.
A lot of these things will just simply go away. We'll have people out who will be obviously unemployed, and there will be some.
Blue states will not be able to use other states' tax dollars to fund their social Marxist programs anymore. That's what it's going to come down to. You either self-supporting in your state or you're not.
We have to. That's the revolution, I think, that works. You go back and you say, starting point, we go back to reset. And if we can consider some of these other departments and bureaucracies later on. But at the moment, we hit the reset button, we go back and we start all over again with just the limited government we had. That's, I'm afraid, the solution, but it's not going to come along with someone just saying, okay, I'll leave my office and my plush federal government retirement behind just because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to easily be done.
Bill, it's been a very difficult week. Biden, though, is looking more and more frail. You saw the situation that happened in Michigan at the car plant just the other day. He was answering questions, which obviously were well-planned, rehearsed questions from, the audience. He was reading the teleprompter. He started reading the lines. You've been in television. I've been in television. There's little notes from the news producer writes on the prompter. It says, drop your line here or blah, 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 blah. And he reads the lines. I say what they've done with Biden, rather than keep him in his basement now, is create a virtual campaign. He's not capable of a real campaign. He can't handle the daily rigors of a modern presidential campaign. So what they've done is, like virtual technology, they've created a virtual campaign. And they hope to get him pushed across the finish line with this virtual campaign, limiting his access. Is the public going to buy this on November 3rd? What say you?
Bill Maher had a television program on HBO. I didn't watch it. I don't subscribe, but I did read this morning some of the highlights of it, which get covered sometimes by news folks. And
yeah, Fox did play the highlights of it this morning on the Fox and Friends show.
He's of course, he's the one person, and he doesn't like President Trump, obviously. But
no.
He's telling all of these liberals who keeps thinking it's in the bag and that the poll numbers are on their side, that they're wrong on this issue. And when the president goes to Nevada today, he's not going to be far from where I'm sitting. You know, I can reach the state line in about 45 minutes.
Okay.
He's going to be in Nevada today, and he'll have the same type of reaction he had the other day where the crowd started screaming that they loved him. I don't know of any candidate.
He got choked up over that, Bill.
Yeah, he did.
He got choked up. He doesn't get choked up easy, but he got choked up over that.
The liberals can say, well, that's just his base. But okay, the base is immovable.
Right.
Once more, you still have weeks to go before Election Day, and Joe Biden, he just can't, this is going to become more and more obvious by the day. And people say, well, we want stability. Okay, even if you think that Donald Trump is he's roiling the pot, I'm going to tell you right now, he's a heck of a lot more stable than what the other guys are offering.
Bill, I still do not believe that Biden is going to show up at the debates. I don't believe he can handle it. And they may throw in some, Biden wants to use a prompter during the debates or something like that. And then Trump is going to say, I'm not going to agree to that. And then they just say, okay, we're walking away because Trump has refused to agree to our terms. I still don't think Biden is going to debate. I don't see how he can. If he does, Trump will make mincemeat out of him.
Trump will say something and Biden will turn around and start charging across the stage and say, hey, man, I'm going to take you to the woodshed, as he stumbles and rolls his way across the stage. And with that, when he's tackled by Secret Service agents, game over.
William, it's great to talk to you. And maybe we can get together toward the middle of this coming week and touch base again, because I think there's going to be another one of these outlandish charges that are going to come up. They just every couple of days are going to throw another one out there. The mainstream media, Marxist state media, is going to go with it. They're going to try to keep throwing excrement against the wall, hoping that something sticks. And of course, we have a new investigation on a Russia interference thing with the new charges by Adam Schiff. It's going to be so much to talk about. That's for sure.
I think that from here until November 3rd will be like no other 6 to 8 weeks we've ever lived through before.
And we thought Nixon McGovern was interesting. William?
George, 20 years after that election, back in 1992, and he got off an airplane, was walking through the terminal, and I started talking with him, and I said, people must have been excited to see you on the plane. And he said, no, nobody recognizes me.
Yeah, one time I was walking through LaGuardia Airport with Hubert Humphrey, and it was the summer of 1971. Nobody recognized him. Nobody knew who he was. And he was Hubert Humphrey. You can say what you want about him politically. He was a very nice man. He and Muriel, they were wonderful, very nice, congenial, very friendly people. But well, it's a lot easier than sitting next to Chuck Schumer on a plane. Maybe we'll talk about that. My last time I sat next to Chuck Schumer on an air flight, that didn't go very well for Chucky Schumer.
I can tell you about riding in one of these future broadcasts about riding the chopper with George Pataki, who was a nice guy, by the way. Ineffectual, but a nice guy.
Also very tall.
Very tall.
All right. I'm Jake Smith. He is Bill Colley. This is Boardwalk Potatoes. Hope that you've enjoyed this podcast, and we will talk to you again very soon.